Fort Collins. I was born in Denver, Colorado, in Fitzsimmons Hospital. My dad was in the Army, or in the Air Force. Actually, he was a colonel in the Air Force, and it was during the war, and so I only lived there for a year. I've been raised in the Pacific Northwest, up by Seattle, in a town called Everett, Washington, and then my wife and I got married, and we spent 21 years of our life in a small community called Pullman, Washington, or Washington, where I was coaching at Washington State University. 21 years, not all in a row, but the whole time that we lived there. Different, undergraduate school, graduate school, and we moved back and forth. But my dad was my role model all my life, just about everything that I did, and he was a coach of the Everett junior college football team at the time. But my role models have all been coaches and friends. I came from an area in Washington where we, at one time, from the same high school, I was the head football coach at Washington State University. The head football coach at the University of Washington was Jim Lambright from the same high school I was from, and the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks was from the same high school, and we were all friends in high school, and we all had the top jobs in the state. Well, they were great. And we only had one. We just had two high schools in our city, and the Everett High School had a long, rich tradition of football being important. Washington is a lot different than Texas when it comes to sports. Texas, in parts of Texas, football is the only thing in town. In the Pacific Northwest, it doesn't have that. But if there was any town that was more like that, it was our town of Everett. I ran around with football players. I ran around with coaches, kids, like I was. They were my best friends, and their dads were the coaches, and we were all the same age, and so we ran around together. Well, I like fishing. I played all the sports growing up, football, basketball, baseball, track. I tried to wrestle. I tried to swim. Swimming was probably the hardest sport because you drown if you don't make it. So there's really a lot on the line. Track, if you're running or throwing the javelin, you can just stop and nothing happens, so you can't stop in swimming. So, and I was probably the worst at that. I just did that for a year in high school. But football was my number one sport, and I was best at that. And that's what I kept up all the time. My dad, I just wanted to be a football coach ever since I was a young boy. I used to go to my dad's practices. I used to go to his games with him. He was great because he'd let me be around. I used to be a ball boy, wipe the balls, keep them dry. It rained a lot at our games, in the Pacific Northwest. And then he'd bring the films home, and I'd watch the films. And in those days and age, sometimes at the junior college, you'd bring a kid in from out of state, and he might stay at your house and live with you. It's against the rules now for that to happen, but we used to have a lot of kids bunk at our house and stuff like that. So and then I played the sports. My two brothers played the sports. But as an adult, football isn't a hobby. It's my profession, first of all, but it's hard for you to go out when you're 50 years old and play football. So that's where I developed fishing and that type of thing. I'm not much of a hunter. I like boating, and I'm not much of a golfer. And it's hard for me to fish here because there's not a lot of water. I think it's more of a calling for me than a profession. I think I just feel like that's kind of what I'm supposed to do, and I don't think I'm going to do anything else in my whole life. And I've had lots of odd jobs when I was in college, but I just think that's what I was meant to do on earth here, and I really love it. And when I quit, that'll be it. I'm not going to probably do anything else except be a professional grandfather. Football. We'd just go out and, watch the game on TV. It was Notre Dame football every Sunday, and then pro football, I'd go out and emulate the guys who I saw on TV, and by myself with the next door neighbor, my dad or my brother, play catch, it was always football first. In baseball season, it was baseball, and basketball, but it was always football all the time for me. I had two older brothers, didn't coach. They did, they played football too, and were good and stuff, but they didn't get into the coaching. I wanted to be a football coach. When I was a little kid, I always tell people I didn't learn my ABCs, I learned my X's and O's when I was little. Yeah, I always wanted to be a football coach. Yeah, here I am. And I never did anything else full time, never done anything